Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Late Winner Show. We continue our Champions League previews, which are coming up in the next 2 days. I think I can't speak for both of you, but I think I'm very excited that Champions League is back and the fans are back in the stadium. So it's going to be really electric. Those away nights in Ukraine and away nights in Besiktas, and I hope we get to know more about Besiktas today. But how are you guys feeling, and how are you guys?
Excellent. I'm thrilled just to have the league underway now too. We're 4 weeks in, so it's great to have football back, and obviously for us to be back in the Champions League after a few years away. It's really great anticipation here. Very excited.
Definitely. And I have to echo that sentiment. I think it's just great to see football back in action and with fans back in the stadiums. I think that's what was missing last season. Is just, that intensity that you sometimes get in derby games. You miss that certainly for the majority of that season. And I think having that alongside, I think the players craved it as well. You saw that towards the end. They just said the games aren't the same. So, it was just a shame we had the Euros to break it up, I think, in some respects, because we were just getting started, right? But It is what it is. The fixture is really congested right now, and we're having to play through that pain at the moment. So next year will be very interesting when it comes to the next World Cup, right? So in Qatar. But yeah, we'll forget about that for today.
Yeah. I have obviously you can see their names on the screen, but I have Adam from the 𝗕𝗲𝗀𝗪 podcast and Sinan from the Black Eagles podcast. Do you guys just mind a little bit introducing yourselves and about your podcast as well?
Sure. You go first, Adam. I stole the mic last time.
No problem. So nice to have me on again. So summarizing this group, but just to introduce myself, I'm Adam from the 𝗕𝗲𝗀𝗪 podcast. We're based in the UK and we cover a lot of the European leagues, so not just the Premier League, talking about the main key topics, I suppose, but we specialize in particular around the Bundesliga and Serie A, whilst also covering the funny stories that happen across Europe. So yes, that's us in a summary. You can catch us on our Twitter page at 𝗕𝗲𝗪pod, as well as Instagram at the 𝗕𝗲𝗀𝗪 podcast. We normally go live on a Thursday night, going live for every streaming platform on the Friday. So feel free to catch us and listen into our show as well.
Yeah,
that's great.
Nice. Yeah, and so I basically run the Black Eagles podcast. We're at times a fairly large team. I've had a few co-hosts. One of them just became a professional footballer in Romania, which is
wow.
Congrats to him, obviously. But another guy, he does recurring segments for us. And so we have a pretty large team, and we have a guy who goes to matches and gets us stadium sound. We've been up and running for about 3 years. We cover Besiktas exclusively and in English for anyone who's interested. The Turkish league is just starting to get coverage on TV here in the United States via beIN, and it's a very fun competitive league. So I recommend, for anyone who's like on the lookout for a new club to follow, I certainly always recommend the Super League. It's last year we won the championship on a 1-goal differential over huge rivals in Istanbul, Galatasaray. So it really is like the if not the most high quality league, certainly maybe one of the more entertaining. I don't know.
I'd say crazy for sure.
Yeah, it's insane, and just crazy goals from 30 yards out, and I mean it's really like it's a fun league. I recommend it for anyone looking for just entertainment value. But yeah, you can follow us on Eagles_podcast. Like I said, we're almost 3 seasons in now, so it's been actually I don't know if I did say that, but we've been doing it for a while. It's a lot of fun.
So I'm the only new guy here then. So we just started 9 months ago. You guys are all doing it for a better part of 2 years, 3 years. So I'm really delighted to have you on our podcast, and thanks so much for again joining. But let's get the party started. I think Group C is probably the most exciting group of all the Champions League groups that I've seen. I think they have Dortmund, Besiktas, Ajax and Sporting Lisbon, the Portugal champions. I think all of them play like really good, entertaining football. So it's all going to be like just constant tension and really good, highly offensive and attractive style of play that we're going to see. So let's just cover a little bit, a short preview on all 4 of the teams. let's start with Borussia Dortmund. I feel like this team like always disappoints me because they have a lot of talent, and instead of just chasing the trophies, they're just interested in making the money, which is fine. Like that's their business model, so I'm okay with that. But I guess like I've always said that in my in our internal podcast that they're like just a bunch of kids who just want to play for fun, and they don't really want to they don't want to win anything. Like they make sure that they prove themselves here and then move to Bayern Munich or move to like any other big club like Real Madrid, Barcelona, or any one of the Premier League clubs. They have really good players. Haaland, Reina, Bellingham, Zagadou, all these guys are going to be probably one of the best players in their respective positions. But I'm not going to waste a lot of time here and talk about Borussia Dortmund's ambitions. Are they going to win the Champions League or not? To be realistic, I don't think so. They are going to win the Champions League. With the group that they're in, do we think that they're going to get out of this group, or are there surprises along the way when the final group games come along in December? What do you think, Adam?
It's a very interesting question. I would say when you're looking at Dortmund, and this is something we talk on our podcast every time we cover the Bundesliga, is have they addressed the defense? Where is this magical defense that's going to help them progress? Because that's always been ultimately the issue with Borussia Dortmund. And you've alluded to, there's some really exciting talents. Even though they have sold Jadon Sancho, they've reinvested that, and they got Daniel Malan from PSV. So this is the thing. I think the other thing that we kind of talk about on our podcast is Haaland. So what was very evident last season, and forgetting about how good a player he is, around his temperament, where he's getting very frustrated by his teammates, the fact that they're either throwing away leads, or the fact that they're just doing really stupid mistakes, really seem to cost them. I think on our previous preview of Group H, I believe we talked about Sevilla and that game in particular, and we were taken aback by how Dortmund kind of got out of that group, or got out of that stage, should we say. This time round, I would say there's not been much of a progress. I mean, you've got Marco Reus now who's in charge, and that appointment was made back in March. You would have thought Marco Reus would have gone about his business and tried to bring in some, talented defenders alongside him, whether that be from Gladbach or elsewhere. But again, it just doesn't seem to be that philosophy that Dortmund encourage. And then you just question where do they go? I mean, what is the expectations with Dortmund? Because there's always been that kind of idea of, challenging for the title. But right now, I think there's about 3-4 other teams now in the Bundesliga that are craving that as well. So somewhere along the lines, they've just got lost with that philosophy. And even today, I was speaking to a friend who happened to be wearing the Borussia Dortmund shirt, and we were reminiscing about the players they used to have. So Lewandowski, Götze, these were very big players in the day. But again, they just get snapped away. They get moved on to another club, or they decide to move on because they just don't see Dortmund progressing. And I think ultimately that's always been the issue with Dortmund. They don't seem to be in that position to move on. So although it's expected potentially for them to finish top of this group, I'd say this is a very open group in my eyes. I think you look at all of the teams, and this includes Besiktas. So sorry, Sinan, if I'm, building up your expectation here, but actually I think
more the other people.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
Okay with it.
But I think definitely, any of those sides have got a chance. It all depends on the head-to-heads, and I think for the likes of Besiktas and Sporting, it'll be interesting to see what they do at home. I think that's going to be critical in terms of how they progress in this group, because we know about Ajax credentials as well. So I think you've got a real interesting blend. I think the games are going to be really fascinating because the style of football as well amongst all the 4 teams is going to be just explosive in terms of the matches. I don't think from a neutral's point of view, they're necessarily looking at this group thinking, this is going to be the amazing games. But actually from a point of view, if you're really into your football, each of these sides are going to be very interesting in the match-to-match. So, yeah, that's my views on Dortmund. I think it's very interesting, expected to finish top of this group, but actually there's a few question marks here defensively, and what does Haaland feel when he goes into that run? Because there'll be certain games where obviously you'll have the Champions League, then league match, then Champions League. That back-to-back element is going to take its effect. And will Haaland get frustrated? I mean, certainly he's got no Jadon Sancho this time. So where is those goals? And 𝗕𝗏𝗏, for example, is going to be very critical. He's started off quite well. But I think defensively, it's always been a shambles. I know they've got Mats Hummels, but that's about it. That's all you can say about Dortmund's defense. And that's where they create goals.
And another point to add to that is that I think Reyna is injured for the next month as well. So
yeah,
that's going to be a problem for them. I know he's sort of vital to their function in the midfield. Yeah, I mean, I agree with your. I'm going to be hard pressed to really criticize our rivals in this group because they really are quite class. And realistically, I bet the odds in Vegas or wherever probably have us pegged as the last place team, and I'm okay with it. We really came into the year with minimal expectations, and obviously our transfer window has shaken those up. But I still view Dortmund as the favorites. Insofar as I think clearly Erling Haaland is the most talented player in the group, right? Individually, maybe someone could argue for Tadic on Ajax. He's very quality as well, but I would say Erling Haaland is probably poised to be the best striker in the world in the next few years. I mean, obviously there are arguments for a couple other guys at the moment, but they're also a bit older than he is. So, I mean, I have nothing but respect for Dortmund and Ajax, and even insofar as you were mentioning their proclivity for selling guys a lot. I have a ton of respect for in this age of oil magnates and whatnot. I really appreciate these clubs like. In fact, Ajax is probably even a better example, but where they can really develop guys and they have some sort of innovative scouting and the ability to really do things well in-house. But obviously, the problem for them has always been the ability to keep those guys and kind of actually develop that core enough to sort of press for success in Europe, especially of late with those magnates splashing cash. I mean, I really do feel bad for clubs in the Bundesliga and Liga because I would hate to go against Bayern Munich every season. I mean, that must be demoralizing. At some point, you might just give up and say, let's just get as much money as we can. And obviously with PSG in Liga now, I would imagine. I mean, I guess Lille won last season, right? But they've just added. I mean, we don't need to even mention who they've added. So anyway, and we're way off topic with that digression there. But yeah, I mean. I sympathize with Dortmund that they have to face a side like Bayern Munich and try to compete with them every year. But at the same time, like you'd like to see them, make that push and really start keeping some of those core players. I think it's interesting how long they've managed to keep Erling Haaland, with all the rumors around. But yeah, I mean, anyway, I still view them as favorites, but I think Ajax serially overperform, with whatever they managed to kind of build their team around. And then obviously with Sporting and us, Besiktas, it should be a fascinating group. It's not the group of death, right? Because we don't have the big name, but it could very well be the most competitive group, if not. I think maybe Group F or G also has a lot of tight competition, but I'm really looking forward to it. And we're playing Dortmund on Wednesday, so we get to worry about that immediately.
Big test, yeah.
But I think they're not only missing Giovanni Reyna, but I think they have a few injury issues. So yeah, we do too.
I can definitely vouch for Group F that it's not a tough group. Manchester are favorites to win that.
Oh, there you go. Sorry.
No. That's well put for Dortmund. And I know, Sinan, let's talk about your team. Let's talk about Besiktas. I think I want to know more about Besiktas from you. I think they've been the ruling force of Turkish football for the past several years, and even though some suggested, I think I read somewhere that someone was suggesting they might collapse due to the financial problems experienced last year. That obviously did not happen. I think Besiktas turned out to be even more stronger this year, or last year. And as we were just talking before we started this podcast about 𝗕𝗲𝗕𝗏𝗕𝗏's arrival is a big boost for them. And overall, I think the Turkish team has obviously been very active this summer. I think they landed 𝗕𝗲𝗪 𝗏𝗪𝗏 to come on loan from Chelsea. Jermaine Lens, he arrived as well. Francesco Montero, he arrived as well. But I guess the biggest sign for me was 𝗕𝗔𝗧𝗘. Or 𝗵𝗔𝗧𝗘, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, from Leicester City. Rachid Ghezal from Leicester City, and then he should provide an instant impact in the team. They obviously, and I've mentioned Besiktas are a very interesting team. They like to attack no matter what the result is. So we will see a really open game. And we mentioned about how Dortmund's defense is. I can only see a 4-all, 5-2, 5-3 kind of scoreline against Besiktas when they play. Yeah. So what do you think?
That would probably work to our advantage, honestly. Because I mean, so one correction: Jermaine Lens is actually outgoing.
Okay.
But because we actually replaced him with Rachid Ghezal permanently.
Okay.
And so I mean, to sort of rewind a little bit to what you were saying, last season I had very minimal expectations. In fact, Turkey in general, right? The economy was collapsing. COVID, obviously, right? That's a sort of global problem financially for a lot of people in football. And so things were looking quite dire. And the moves we made for Valentin Rosier, who was the third string right back at Sporting Lisbon, actually, and Rachid Ghezal, who we loaned in from Leicester, they seemed like last minute kind of throw something at the wall and see if it sticks, but they did, and it really we had a new coach who's kind of a club legend in 𝗟𝗃 𝗫𝗓𝗏, and the camaraderie aspect, the kind of man management skills, really went into high gear, and it's the guys were having a ball the whole season, just really jubilant, fun. There was all these clips of them having snowball fights and stuff in training, and so there seemed to be a really strong team ethos that was being built. Joseph de Souza, also, who years ago featured for Brazil's national side, and then Fenerbahce, who's a rival. He thrived for us in the kind of number 6 role in the back of our midfield. I mean, just everything kind of came together perfectly. And so this season, it was kind of let's just do the best we can to keep that squad together and keep the good vibes going or whatever. And so keeping Rosier and Ghezal was pretty much what we wanted to do, and anything above and beyond that was just okay, let's see what we can do in Europe. I mean, nobody had any expectations or lofty goals or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And then we managed to keep both Rosier and Ghezal relatively quickly, and most of us were shocked by that because of our I mentioned financial issues, and they negotiated good deals, and the players kind of strong-armed their clubs a little bit because they really wanted to return. So that was kind of okay, job done. We'll do the best we can now. Let's just be financially prudent, And then we got Batshuayi, on loan. So not even a huge financial commitment on our end, which was okay, that's great. Okay, we did lose Aboubakar, who was our main striker last season. So that seemed like a stroke of luck, kind of. And then Pjanic was nobody. We were talking earlier, I had kind of underestimated his ability because of all the talk about how Barca overspent and how he probably shouldn't have even gone there in the first place. And so the first time I really paid attention to his game was in his recent qualifiers for the World Cup. He was astounding. So I thought, okay, that could be good. And then sure enough, his debut was yesterday. I don't know if we're airing live, but and he assisted our first goal, was a general maestro in the midfield. Obviously, the Turkish league has sort of stepped down for him, but he looks like he's ready to go. I think for he and Batshuayi, I think both of them need to have good seasons in the Super League and maybe even in Europe so that they can elevate themselves back if they want to, into the bigger leagues in Europe. So it seems like that's working in our favor. And the big question, we also added Alex Teixeira, maybe a throwback. His previous days for Shakhtar, he was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And he has sort of seamlessly come back. He scored a goal in his first match last week. He got injured, however, so he might not feature against Dortmund. Also, 𝗕𝗲𝗃𝗕𝗏, Croatian national team central defender, he got injured, so he won't feature on Wednesday. But generally, we have a very strong squad. And what went, where we started from kind of just like, let's see what happens in Europe. We don't have any expectations. Now suddenly, I don't know. Dortmund looks a little leaky in the back. Ajax is always a bit of a wild card. I actually anticipate struggling against them the most. And, Sporting, I don't know. I think we they have more individual talent, but I think we might have more squad depth and kind of talent all around the pitch now. So, anything can happen. I would love third place personally for Besiktas, but anything above that, I would accept happily. But that's it. That's my Besiktas diatribe. Sorry, I'm obviously excited to talk Besiktas for the champion.
I think I'm a little bit more knowledgeable now about Besiktas. Definitely, I think that's a great preview on what we can expect from Besiktas, right? Let's continue our preview and talk a little bit about the Portugal champions as well, who were in this part one. So I'm guessing they should be the favorites to go through in this group. When this Cristiano Ronaldo saga happened two weeks ago about him returning, him wanting to leave in Juventus, and there's a lot of things that there's a lot of rumors about Sporting Lisbon as well. He might come back to his youth team, but obviously he decided to go back to England. So I'm really happy about it. So I'll keep mentioning about Ronaldo coming to the podcast. And then obviously he would have been a really good mentor to all the young talents that Sporting Lisbon has. Even though a lot of players have left this summer, the Sporting Lisbon team has obviously covered up their departures with really good replacement. I think Pablo Sarabia, he came from PSG on loan. Pedro Porro and Ruben Vinagre, who will play as loan players from Man City and Wolves respectively. João Palhinha and then Pedro Gonçalves are the two leaders over there. Both of them have real good quality and they can play in obviously much stronger teams than Sporting Lisbon. Their coach, I cannot forget that coach, Ruben Amorim. If that's Amorim, Amorim. He's the head coach.
Also a club legend, I believe.
Yeah. And he's been doing actually a really wonderful job. He's producing high class players and providing really good results so far. And they started well in this campaign as well. So where are we lying on Sporting Lisbon, and do we see them as the dark horses for this Champions League, or just like expecting them to go to the round of 16 and then going out in that phase?
I think from my point of view, I was going to say Sporting Lisbon should not be underestimated here, because although I think a lot of people don't expect them to do much, what they did in the Premier Liga last season is they beat, the likes of Porto, they beat the likes of Benfica, and they were 5 points ahead of Porto in the league. So, and as you've rightly said, Amorim is the key catalyst for that. And the fact that they spent 10 million euros to bring him from Braga across to Sporting kind of shows you how much they feel that his philosophy is going to change that squad. First title in 19 years, that says it as well. There's always that rumor around, have Sporting got this curse, a bit like the Benfica curse, but he got them the title. And I think fans should look out for is the formation. So they play with a 5-2-3 formation, which is kind of 5-3-2, right? But actually what he does is he looks at pivots, so very similar to what Ajax do. So essentially you saw it during the Euros where teams would have three centre-backs almost at times, and they would drag the ball forward. But what he does is he evolves that game so that players, for example, if they get pulled out, someone drops in, and vice versa. If they go on to attack, it doesn't matter who's leading that attack. They just make sure that they rotate and they continue to recycle the ball as well. So I think that intensity that he'll bring to games is going to be interesting. And as you said, Pedro Gonçalves obviously they bought in from Wolves. yeah, he'll be fascinating to watch this season. I think obviously a lot's been made out of him. So what can he do on a regular, consistent basis at a European competition like this is going to be interesting. They also, just as a note, they brought in Paulinho from Braga. So obviously someone that 𝗕𝗏𝗪𝗓 does know from his time. Not got the most prolific goal scoring record, but the one thing you can say is he's going to form as part of that pinnacle for Sporting Lisbon. So in that kind of maybe target man role, he's going to be very critical in holding up the play, making sure he brings the plays into that game as well. So it'll be very fascinating. I think Sporting Lisbon should not be, underestimated. I think they'll be very interesting. It would just be a question of, do they need more experience? Whereas, Besiktas with 𝗕𝗏𝗪𝗓 Pjanic, I think, is critical for that Champions League run-in. And I think, it'll be very fascinating, with these individual talents, what they can do for teams, because I think ultimately teams like Besiktas and Sporting Lisbon on team alone sometimes might struggle, but the individual brilliance of someone like Pjanic, for example, or Erling Haaland will make that difference in certain games. So, I think that may be where Sporting might get found out, but we'll wait and see. But I'm expecting really intense games when you play Sporting Lisbon for sure.
Yeah. I think they have a really, in terms of the group, if we talk about, I think they have the most balanced squad overall, and that's why I don't think that they're just a pushover in this group or even in the Champions League. I think even if they finished in first, let's say they finish first in the group, I think they still might get like a Barcelona or a Man City in their knockout stage. They still can provide that kind of competition to those teams. I'm not saying that they're just going to be pushovers even in the round 16. You can't. I don't see them just being bowed out of the tournament with like an aggregate score of 5-0, and even if when they qualify for the round of 16. I'm saying when they qualify, I'm hoping that they do qualify, because obviously I don't follow a lot of Portuguese football, but obviously I followed their to prepare for this podcast. I watched a couple of their games last season, from last season, sorry. So really impressed me, and I've been reading about them, about for the last couple of days, and things have really impressed me about Sporting Lisbon, and I'm expecting really good things, really good, attractive, and good football from them this season. Sinan, any thoughts that you want to add?
Certainly Pote, Pedro Gonçalves, or whatever. He's someone to look out for. Very afraid of him. But Portuguese football also, it's very like Turkish football as far as having these sort of a few really strong clubs from the same city. Even I actually lived in Lisbon for almost half a year or something like that years ago. And my friends there all got me to support Benfica. So, it was an interesting. It's a very passionate city about their two clubs. One of the great things about this group is how passionate all these fan bases are, and they're up there as well, certainly. So, I don't know a ton about them except for to look out for guys like Pote and Sarabia, guys who you've already mentioned. But I honestly anticipate them being our main rivals for that third spot. I think Dortmund and Ajax are still the stronger of the four, but that's that kind of group. Anything can happen.
Yeah,
definitely.
That's good. Let's talk about the last team in the group, which is the Dutch powerhouse Ajax. They're obviously the 4-time European champions, but since that season where they lost in the last minute to Tottenham, I think there's been a slight decline, at least in the European competitions that I've seen from them. Some of the players have obviously left. They've not been able to find the quality replacements that they needed. Two of their players who are veterans of the team, Dusan Tadic and Daley Blind, and along with Steven Bergwijn, who arrived from Feyenoord this year. One player I'll mention is David Neres. I think I was really, really impressed again that season when they played against Real Madrid, but they defeated Real Madrid in the quarterfinals, and they almost won against Tottenham, bearing that last minute goal from Lucas Moura. His progress has slowed down in the past 2 years, and this might be the season, because I feel like this is the make or break season for him. Either he proves to be that massive talent and shows us like, you know, he has that talent to go on and actually play in those big teams, or he just becomes like a normal squad player and just saying like, yeah, he is a good solid player, but this is his reach, and that's where he'll play the rest of his life. I think one player that I'll again mention is Ryan Gravenberch, who's a 19-year-old midfielder. He's ready to explode as well. No need to point out how Ajax play. Obviously, they score over 2.5 goals every game they play in. But again, they're the league that they play in, 𝗕𝗲𝗧𝗘, it's not like really competitive. And I think the next major team in that league is PSV. So it's either between Ajax or PSV every season. But they have really good fast attacks down the flanks. They do short passes on the rivals' part of field. As I mentioned, pretty much 80% of their games have 2.5 goals in them. But being said, you know, what they have done in the past couple of seasons in the European competitions, do we have any kind of expectations from them, or are they again bound for a Europa League squad?
I'll let Sinan answer.
Yeah, I'll go first. I expect, like, I honestly, I see them as being kind of in an upward trend right now.
Okay.
Obviously, there was a big drop off from their semi-final in the Champions League in 2018-19, but they kind of fell out early in the Europa League the next season, and then they went a little further in the Europa League. But then last season they were kind of almost back to their Champions League kind of overperforming form. So I anticipate them really getting it together. A guy who you didn't mention, and people might have seen me looking at my phone. I had to confirm his first name, but 𝗕𝗲𝗓𝗏 𝗂𝗏 is a guy who
Sorry.
Right?
Yeah,
he kind of fell off the radar for a few years. He was being shopped around, you know, after
Everton happened as well.
I was gonna say, after he kind of fell off in Everton, it seemed like he might be about done. He was rumored for clubs in Turkey for a while, but you know, when I was prepping for our podcast, we had some Ajax guys on. I was so impressed by how he seems to have found another level of his game with Ajax again. So you know, they have a lot of, like, if it's kind of one of those scenarios where if it all comes together, they could almost beat anyone. But that's, I think, always the question for them. But in their defense, you know, they do, especially in the Champions League, or in Europe generally speaking, they kind of find that form, you know, or at least when they need to. Typically, obviously, you know, a couple of years exception recently, but yeah, I expect, like I said, I think it'll be between them and Dortmund to win the group, personally. But
okay.
Definitely. I would say this is the thing. I was going to allude to 𝗕𝗲𝗓𝗏 𝗂𝗏, but you've stolen my thunder. So fair play. But another player we should look out for is Antony as well, who they brought in from São Paulo. A lot of expectation about what he can do, whether he can mimic a lot of that production line that Ajax seems to be so famous at doing right now. I think what you've also got, and a player that probably has gone down under the radar, is 𝗵𝗲𝗯. Obviously, being that kind of focal target man style, not very fancied. I mean, in England at West Ham, he didn't really get a fair shot, and it was a bit of a weird one at the time because West Ham fans were a bit like, why is he being sold? Like, we've got no strikers. What? And he never got a chance. So clearly there was a clash behind the scenes with David Moyes, and David Moyes is kind of a very stuck in his ways kind of manager. But yeah, I mean, he's going to be very interesting because he seems to be banging in a lot of interesting goals. I mean, not just your traditional target man style. He was doing overhead kicks, so if I remember last season. So, you know, he's been doing some spectacular goals. So it'll be interesting or fascinating from my point of view to see how he plays at that level. Because I think, you know, going into West Ham, there's not that huge expectation that you're going to be a Champions League player. We know what Dusan Tadic can do. But I think the big thing will be Erik ten Hag's tactics when it comes to the big game. So, you know, when they need to grind out results, a bit like that Tottenham results, you expected maybe them to show what they could do. And for that second leg, it just seems like it crumbled away. Just as soon as the first, you know, Tottenham goal came in, the mentality changed, you know, a bit like France in the Euros. As soon as Switzerland got back into the game, you're kind of like, right, the big game players have to turn up. And for some reason, they just kind of froze on that occasion. And I think this is going to be interesting to see what this Ajax team does, because I think, as we've said on this preview of Ajax, they're going from a league in 𝗬𝗲𝗓 where they're not as competitive in every team. So, you know, how can they bring their A game to the big games in Europe? They're very similar to Scotland with Rangers and Celtic in that respect, where they've got that expectation to always over-deliver, I suppose. And that fan base obviously demands that they win stuff as well. So it'd be fascinating to see. I mean, definitely, I think from the outsider's point of view, who don't look into football, they'd expect them to be in the top two. But I would say there's a bit of Ajax in me that feels like, yeah, they could bottle it at times as well. So I think, like I've said, it all depends on the likes of Besiktas and Sporting and what they do in their home games. Because away, you know, this is where teams like Dortmund should win. But actually, when it comes to those environments as well, because we forget about that, the environments like Besiktas, I don't expect there to be any mercy on anyone turning up at those grounds. So, you know, that kind of atmosphere, we haven't had it for the best part of 18 months. So to go into that environment, very hostile, you know, that is going to be very critical. And I'm not saying that Ajax fans or Ajax players are not used to that. I'm sure they're used to that in their 𝗬𝗲𝗓, but it is different when it's a European night.
Yeah,
definitely different.
Yeah.
And another point I really want to add on to that is they're really struggling with the keeper scenario. You know, their starting guy had that sort of drug issue, right? Where he like, it was really unfortunate. I kind of feel for the guy, but supposedly they're kind of struggling to find that next guy. They've brought some older folks.
𝗕𝗏𝗪, yeah,
𝗕𝗏𝗪. But so, you know, they're a little iffy in the back in that sense. So you know, it's true. They're ripe for surprise as far as us or Sporting
definitely
catching them, especially us at home. Although we're at half capacity, we just broke the attendance record, and at 20,000, I think we might not be at like giving 𝗕𝗏𝗪 a headache level, but maybe just beneath, you know, just beneath that level.
Don't you worry about 𝗕𝗏𝗪. I think he'll score, but then VAR will come up and like, hey, you were offside, so don't you worry about 𝗕𝗏𝗪. I think you guys already touched on Onana. I was going to mention about Onana as like, and all the troubles that he's having. And sincere apologies to all Ajax fans. I completely forgot about Davy Klaassen, because I think like he's turned around his career in the last year or so at Ajax. But brilliant discussion, guys. I think that's a great short preview that we could do about Group C. And again, Sinan, thank you so much for providing that Besiktas preview, because I definitely learned a lot more about Besiktas now. And I'll go ahead and listen to your podcast definitely regularly to know more about Turkish football.
Check it out.
Before we conclude, guys, as we do on our podcast regularly about the Champions League previews, what are your 1, 2, 3, 4s?
Okay,
you go first, Adam.
I think it will, and this is based on quality of these teams. I think this is where my head's being led to. So I will say Dortmund first. I will go for Ajax second and Besiktas third. I just think they will edge it with Pjanic and Batshuayi. I just think they will get those goals that are the important things for Besiktas to progress. And that's just going to be really hard because Sporting Lisbon are just as good. But I just think, like I previewed about Sporting, I just think you need those individual players at this stage. And I think that is very critical. And that's a very big signing for Besiktas. So I think that will make the difference, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not going to veer from what Adam just said. I agree. I think you have to put Dortmund on top. I think Haaland gets them enough goals, regardless of how many goals they allow. And then beyond that, I think you have to give Ajax the edge. And I think I'm going to say us in third, because that's like speaking it into existence type thing. But I have a ton of respect for Sporting. So, I mean, anything can happen. But I like the sound of that 1 through 4.
I think my predictions are definitely weird. I think maybe people kind of hate me now, so that now people might not even listen to my part. Like, hey, this guy just gives weird predictions. But I just don't know. Like, I've seen Dortmund, and I'm not really very impressed with them. Again, even I think last night when they played, They won
Leverkusen.
4-3 Leverkusen, and they were able to nick out that win. But I don't know if you can get that consistently on the Champions League, in the Champions League games, and those again, that the things that we're mentioning again and again, like the crowds coming back into the stadium, and Besiktas fans, Ajax fans are not going to have any mercy on these players, on these teams. So it's going to be like really hostile environments on there. So it's going to take some digging for Dortmund to get out of those games. I'm going to say Lisbon for me is going to be first, Ajax second, Besiktas third, and then Dortmund fourth. I don't really know that why I'm saying this, Dortmund fourth.
Dortmund fourth.
I don't know. I just don't have that feeling.
That's a big call. That's
as long as we're in third. I don't, third is
it seems Besiktas are definitely in third, regardless. Right?
I mean, as long as that's all I need to hear.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on my subscribers count. So if they keep on decreasing, I'll probably come on the podcast and say, "Hey, sorry, Dortmund fans, they're going to qualify first. Please don't unsubscribe." So that's my prediction.
We'll make up your numbers. Besiktas fans are crazy online. You'll get the hashtag come to Besiktas going.
Okay, awesome, guys. But yeah, thanks again, Sinan and Adam, for joining on the podcast. Definitely providing your thoughts on the Group C. Definitely an open group. Let's see what happens. I'm really excited about the Champions League coming back with the fans again. I'm really excited about football's back with the fans. So do not, I'll leave the descriptions. I'll leave the links in the descriptions below for the 𝗕𝗲𝗪 podcast and Sinan's 𝗕𝗲𝗃𝗘𝗪 podcast as well. Go ahead and listen to their podcast. I think they're doing a good, wonderful job. They're good insights on Turkish football, and as 𝗕𝗲𝗪𝗧𝗧 already mentioned, they cover majority of the Bundesliga and Serie A podcast as well. So do give them a listen. But also in the meantime, don't forget to listen to the Late Winner Show podcast as well. I think we've been doing pretty well in the last few months. I think we're getting a little bit of traction, so we're getting there. Keep sharing the love, and I mean, keep supporting us, and definitely give us those likes. Definitely helps us with the algorithm and everything. Also, do follow us on Instagram and Twitter for any kind of football news, transfer news, we do cover FPL as well. So yeah, if you're interested in that, go jump on the Late Winner Show podcast as well for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We go live every week for the FPL videos as well. So that being said, again, thanks Adam and Sinan. I'll hope to see you again soon, and thanks and good night.
Thank you.
Cheers. Take care.
Have a good one.